Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm reading Emma. Reading through Jane Austen books. Look what I just got in the mail. I've just been learning so much about Jane Austen, and I joined Jasna. I joined Jasna, and I don't even remember like which. I think maybe I just joined. I don't even know if I joined a chapter. I sort of did it in like a fog, I was just like, I've got to join, and I did it, and I don't even remember if I joined a specific chapter. No one's reached out. I just imagine somebody would call me and reach out, and nobody has yet. I don't know how memberships work to clubs like this. I probably got the copper membership or something, so nobody's gonna reach out. Did you guys see Austen Land? It got such bad reviews, but it is actually so funny, and Jennifer Coolidge is in it, and the woman who played Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, Seymour Butts. God, such a child. And I got this. It's really funny. You should see Austen Land if you haven't. There's so much going on in Jane Austen world, and I think now more than ever, community is important. So I feel glad that this is a teeny tiny, can be a teeny tiny community where we can all just come and read and learn about Jane Austen. And I really want to read the President's Column of. Can you imagine being the president of Jane Austen Society of North America? I can't even. I'll read this very quickly, but I thought it was really good, Mary. Look at Mary. She looks like a little Mrs. Jennings, doesn't she? It reads, it's the President's Column, Mary Mintz. A new friend of mine, Janelle, we volunteered at the same polling place during the last U.S. presidential election, recently surprised me by bringing up a literary topic. Usually we talk about our politics, husbands, and dogs. Having recently seen a stage production of The Age of Innocence, which I am going to watch today, my husband is back at work, so I'm back here reading, so I have time to putz around in this world of Jane Austen and that era. Janelle expressed her dismay at how sad the dramatic adaptation made her feel. During our quick coffee meetup, she acknowledged that she much prefers Jane Austen over Wharton because Jane Austen novels, particularly the endings, offer hope and joy. The novels certainly can be appreciated for those qualities and for their ability to amuse, even if over the years we have learned how complex and multidimensional they are. In my current phase of rereading, we are always rereading, I am especially alert to the evidence of Austen's concerns about the economic plight of women. Whatever our current interests and inclinations, I think we can always find in which to identify with what we read in Austen. I think we can always find ways in which to, we can always find ways in which to identify with what we read in Austen. Like reading an Austen novel, attending a Jasna AGM. AGM means annual general meeting. AGM means attending an AGM is an annual general meeting. I got it right. Yes. Acronyms are so hard for me to remember. Like reading an Austen novel, attending a Jasna AGM is a great solace and a wonderful distraction. I've often written in this column about the joys of an AGM, and I am especially excited about October's conference in Baltimore. See you all in Baltimore. I hope many of you feel the same way and are planning to join us there. This AGM will be particularly festive and full of fun as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of Austen's birth. I've had a behind-the-scenes look at the planners' outstanding work, and I'm confident that you will thoroughly enjoy yourselves. yourself. I advise you to rest up beforehand because so much will be on offer. This birthday AGM gives us an opportunity not only to explore Austen's genius, but also to think about her impact on our lives and on other lives all over the world. Our AGM will include speakers from 9 countries. Other evidence of Austen's wide appeal and of Jasna's broad reach has appeared in the form of recent media requests connected to the birthday year. A major magazine in China will soon feature an article on Jasna and Austen. Whoa, in the birthday edition of her book, Jane Austen at Home, Lucy Worsley. Oh, I think I watched a video and put it at the end of one of my videos. She went to Austen's house in Bath or perhaps Chawton. I can't remember now. Writes, I believe that everybody should know about the life of Jane Austen, not because she was an important novelist, she was also an important human being, someone who quietly changed the world. This stunning statement resonates. We are all fortunate to have Jane Austen available in good times and in troubled times. We are also fortunate to have the opportunity to celebrate her together at every regional meeting, every AGM, and every reading of our journals, Persuasion and Persuasions Online. Visit jasna.org for more ways to celebrate this birthday year. Ba-da-bum. So, didn't know any of this when I first started this project, but happy to be a part of it in my little small way of just not even rereading, just literally reading for the first time her books. NH Misnomer, thank you for commenting on my hat. That was so sweet. It was a fun hat. And yet again, Andrea, so fun. We were thinking about hypochondriac ents. Again, not a funny disorder or syndrome or mental thing, but funny to think about a tree coming to life, but then being like, the forest, there's a lot of bugs. Or maybe getting out of the forest is scary because it's hard to get out there. But also sad, but also hard. And we support hypochondriac ents on this channel. We're reading Emma. We're on chapter technically 24, but I'm in volume 2 in my book, chapter 6 of volume 2. Frank Churchill's been to town. We got to talk to Frank Churchill. Emma, she's on some thin ice. She just got stood up by Jane at the piano. We know that Mr. Elton's married. We know that Mr. Frank Churchill is in town and that he just got here, and he got here early. So that's very interesting to me. I'll read the last paragraph of the last chapter just so we can... He's gonna go pay a visit to the Bateses. Love to hear that. Love to hear Mr. Frank Churchill still declined to get a man to follow him to Mrs. and Miss Bates's house. That's right, because Mr. Woodhouse was like, you need to have somebody with you to show you the way. Mr. Frank Churchill still declined that man, looking as serious as he could, and his father gave his hearty support by calling out, "My good friend, this is quite unnecessary. Frank knows a puddle of water when he sees it. And as to Mrs. Bates, he may get there from the Crown in a hop, step, and jump." That's the first time I've ever read those words in a novel. I've only heard those words spoken, and it's very cute that is a real thing that people used to say. A hop, step, and a jump. They were permitted to go alone, and with cordial nod from one, and a graceful bow from the other, the two gentlemen took leave. Emma remained very well pleased with this beginning of the acquaintance, and could now engage to think of them all at Randall's any hour of the day, with full confidence in their comfort. I'm addicted to lollipops. I can't help it, and I know everybody says they're bad, but I love them. Now, chapter 6. I'm going to be reading a lot today. You guys better be ready. Buckle up, because I'm posting a lot of videos today. Chapter 6. The next morning brought Mr. Frank Churchill again. He came with Mrs. Weston, to whom and to Highbury he seemed to take very cordially. He's taken well to Mrs. Weston, and he has taken well to Highbury. Cordially. He's taken cordially, very cordially. He had been sitting with her, it appeared, most companionably at home till her usual hour of exercise. She's got baby pigs that she tosses up. She's doing baby pig squat tosses. What's she doing? Just walking? What is she doing? There's like the keto CrossFit guy in these villages. That would be so funny. What did people do for exercise back then? There's boxing? I don't know. He had been sitting with her, it appeared, most companionably at home till her usual hour of exercise, and on being desired to choose their walk, immediately fixed on Highbury. And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you just walk to Highbury? He did not doubt there being very pleasant walks in every direction, but if left to him, he should always choose the same. Highbury, that airy, cheerful, happy-looking Highbury, would be his constant attraction. Highbury, with Mrs. Weston, stood for Hartfield, and she trusted to its bearing the same construction with him. They walked thither directly. Emma had hardly expected them, for Mr. Weston, who had called in for half a minute in order to hear that his son was very handsome, knew nothing of their plans, and it was an agreeable surprise to her, therefore, to perceive them walking up to the house together, arm in arm. I love it when friends meet for the first time and they just get along so well. It's so fun. And there's always those two friends where you're like, they're not ever going to get along. And you're like, they actually have to meet right now for whatever reason. And then they meet, and then it's like a magical thing. It is truly magical when people you don't even think, you're so nervous and you're like, oh, she's going to be like this and they're going to be like that. And it's going to be awful. And I can't wait for it to be over. And they're just like talking so much. You could leave the room. You could actually leave and they would be totally fine. Love it. Magical. They're walking arm in arm at the house together. She was wanting to see him again, and especially to see him in company with Mrs. Weston, upon his behaviour, to whom her opinion of him was to depend. If he were deficient there, nothing should make amends for it. But on seeing them together, she became perfectly satisfied. It was not merely in fine words or hyperbolical compliment that he paid his duty. Nothing could be more proper or pleasing than his whole manner to her. Nothing could more agreeably denote his wish of considering her as a friend and securing her affection. And there was time enough for Emma to form a reasonable judgment, as their visit included all the rest of the morning. They were all there walking about together for an hour or two, first round the shrubberies of Hartfield, and afterwards in Highbury, where he was delighted with everything, admired Hartfield sufficiently for Mr. Woodhouse's ear, and when their going farther was resolved on, confessed his wish to be made acquainted with the whole village, and found matter of commendation and interest much oftener than Emma could have supposed. Yeah, like, sometimes this all feels so superficial and, like, disingenuous, but then when you meet a person who is truly like this, and it's not fake, it's lovely. Some of the objects of his curiosity spoke very amiable feelings. He begged to be shown the house which his father had lived in so long, and which had been the home of his father's father, and on recollecting that an old woman who had nursed him was still living, walked in quest of her cottage from one end of the street to the other. Walked in quest? Are you joking? Somebody read this book and then invented a video game. Somebody in the 80s read Jane Austen and then invented the very first video game about, like, The inventor of Super Mario Brothers read this book. And that's how video games were invented. He walked to the NPC of the cottage, who's just been there forever and ever, walked in quest of her cottage from one end of the street to the other, and though in some points of pursuit or observation there was no positive merit, they showed altogether a goodwill towards Highbury in general, which must be very like a merit to those he was with. He's collecting, like, lives. He's collecting, like, good merit in the video game. Whoa. Emma watched and decided that with such feelings as were now shown, it could not be fairly supposed that he had been ever voluntarily absenting himself. That he had not been acting a part or making a parade of insincere professions, and that Mr. Knightley certainly had not done him justice. And you didn't do him justice either in the very beginning. Just checking in on you, Emma. Just remember. Their first pause was at the Crown Inn, an inconsiderable house, though the principal one of the sort, where a couple of pair of post horses were kept, more for the convenience of the neighbourhood than from any run on the road. And his companions had not expected to be detained by any interest excited there. But in passing it, they gave the history of the large room visibly added. It had been built many years ago for a ballroom, and while the neighbourhood had been in particularly populous dancing state, had been occasionally used as such. But such brilliant days had long passed away, and now the highest purpose for which it was ever wanted was to accommodate a whist club, established among the gentlemen and half-gentlemen. What is a half-gentleman of the place? What's a half-gentleman? Established among the gentlemen and half-gentlemen? What is a half-gentleman? Is there like a rank of gentlemen? Is there like a, well, you're only half it. What? Okay, let me see if I can. Let me just do a really quick half gentleman. Huh. That's blowing my mind right now. What is a half gentleman? Half-gentleman probably includes the more wealthy men in town who nonetheless are considered real gentlemen. Wait, includes more wealthy... Wait. I don't know if I trust AI, but it's going to say something. It says something. Let's see. In Jane Austen novels, the concept of a gentleman is central, but it's not always straightforward and absolute definition. A half-gentleman could refer to someone who possesses some but not all of the qualities expected of a gentleman in Austen society. This could include someone with a lower social class trying to imitate the manners of the gentry, or someone who has the external appearance of a gentleman but lacks the necessary moral or intellectual substance. Wow. A half gentleman as a spectrum. What is Jane Austen's darkest book? Mansfield Park. Really? Okay, let's go to the Republic of Pemberley really quick. Okay, in response to half-gentleman. There is no strict definition of half-gentleman, although there is some suggestion that the distinction, at least in Ireland, between gentlemen and half-gentlemen had to do with the size of their estate. Okay, let's get the rulers out. Men always have to get the rulers out. That's really funny that this is the first book that she's said that in, right? Am I crazy? Half-gentleman? You're just learning whist, so you're a half-gentleman. Okay. Accommodate a whist club established for the gentlemen. It's also cool to think of, like, these people who lived so long ago. There was also history there, so he was like, oh, this 100 years ago before this used to be a hotel or whatever. And people like being nostalgic, even back then, from a time even longer ago. I just saw this plaque around my city that I've never ever seen before next to this gigantic redwood tree that I've also never just like sat and noticed before. And it was like something about 1866 and Mr. Mike Folsom or Mark L. Folsom. They're like, the guy's name was Folsom, and that's how they, or Natoma? Mike L. Natoma, something like that. And there was this plaque was made in the 80s, 1988, which also sounds, the kids are calling that the late 1900s, last century when I was born. Okay. Half-gentleman is really tossing me up here. Whist club established among the gentlemen and half-gentlemen of the place. He was immediately interested. Me too, Frank. Its character as a ballroom caught him, and instead of passing on, he stopped for several minutes at the two superior sashed windows which were open, to look in and contemplate its capabilities, and lament that its original purpose should have ceased. He saw no fault in the room. He would acknowledge none which they suggested. No, it was long enough, broad enough, handsome enough. It would hold the very number for comfort. They ought to have balls there at least every fortnight through the winter. Why had not Miss Woodhouse revived the former good old days of the room? She who could do anything in Highbury. The want of proper families in the place, and the conviction that none beyond the place and its immediate environs could be tempted to attend, were mentioned, but he was not satisfied. He could not be persuaded that so many good-looking houses as he saw around him could not furnish numbers enough for such a meeting, and even when particulars were given and families described, he was still unwilling to admit that the inconvenience of such a mixture would be anything, or that there would be the smallest difficulty in everybody's returning into their proper place the next morning. He argued like a young man, very much bent on dancing, and Emma was rather surprised to see the constitution of the Weston prevail so decidedly against the habits of the Churchills. Love that sentence. He seemed to have all the life and spirit, cheerful feelings and social inclinations of his father, and nothing of the pride or reserve of Enscombe. Of pride, indeed, there was perhaps scarcely enough. His indifference to a confusion of rank bordered too much on inelegance of mind. He could be no judge, however, of the evil he was holding cheap. It was but an effusion of lively spirits. It's addicting to be around somebody like that. A lively, spirited person is like, you can only get lively also. Fun. At last he was persuaded to move on from the front of the Crown, and being now almost facing the house where the Bateses lodged, Emma recollected his intended visit the day before, and asked him if he had paid it. Oh yes, he replied. I was just going to mention it. A very successful visit. I saw all the three ladies, and felt very much obliged to you for your preparatory hint. If the talking aunt had taken me quite by surprise, it must have been the death of me. As it was, I was only betrayed into paying a most unreasonable visit. 10 minutes would have been all that was necessary, perhaps all that was proper, and I had told my father I should certainly be at home before him, but there was no getting away, no pause, and to my utter astonishment I found, when he, finding me nowhere else, joined me there at last, that I had been actually sitting with him for nearly 3/4 of an hour. The good lady had not given me the possibility of escape before. Miss Bates. And how do you think Miss Fairfax looking? Ill, very ill. That is, if a young lady can ever be allowed to look ill. But the expression is hardly admissible. Mrs. Weston, is it? Ladies can never look ill. And seriously, Miss Fairfax is naturally so pale as almost always to give the appearance of ill health. A most deplorable want of complexion. I have a want of complexion. So funny. Ugh. Emma would not agree to this and began a warm defence of Miss Fairfax's complexion. It was certainly never brilliant, but she would not allow it to have a sickly hue in general, and there was a softness and delicacy in her skin which gave peculiar elegance to the character of her face. He listened with all due deference, acknowledged that he had heard many people say the same, but yet he must confess that to him nothing could make amends for the want of the fine glow of health. Where features were indifferent, a fine complexion gave a beauty to them all, and where they were good, the effect was, fortunately, he did not attempt to describe what the effect was. Well, said Emma, there is no disputing about taste. At least you admire her except her complexion. He shook his head and laughed. I cannot separate Miss Fairfax and her complexion. Did you see her often at Weymouth? Were you often in the same society? At this moment they were approaching Ford's, and he hastily exclaimed, Ha! This must be the very shop that everybody attends every day of their lives, as my father informs me. He comes to Highbury himself, he says, 6 days out of 7, and has always business at Ford's. If it be not inconvenient to you, pray let us go in, that I may prove myself to belong to the place, to be a true citizen of Highbury. I must buy something at Ford's. It will be taking out my freedom. I dare say they sell gloves. Oh, yes, gloves and everything. I do admire your patriotism. You will be adored in Highbury. You were very popular before you came, because you were Mr. Weston's son. But lay out half a guinea at Ford's, and your popularity will stand upon your own virtues. They went in, and while the sleek, well-tied parcels of men's beavers and York tan were bringing down and displaying on the counter, he said, But I beg your pardon, Miss Woodhouse, you were speaking to me, and you were saying something at the very moment of this burst of my amore patrice. Amor patrice. Amor patrice. Do not let me lose it. I assure you the utmost stretch of public fame would not make me amends for the loss of any happiness in private life. Oh, I merely asked whether you had known much of Miss Fairfax and her party at Weymouth. And now that I understand your question, I must pronounce it to be a very unfair one. It is always the lady's right to decide on the degree of acquaintance. Miss Fairfax must already have given her account. I shall not commit myself by claiming more than she may choose to allow. What a gentleman! He's more than half gentleman. Upon my word, you answer as discreetly as she could do herself. But her account of everything leaves so much to be guessed. She is so very reserved, so very unwilling to give the least information about anybody. And I really think you may say what you like of your acquaintance with her. May I indeed? Then I will speak the truth, and nothing suits me so well. I met her frequently at Weymouth. I had known the Campbells a little in town, and at Weymouth we were very much in the same set. Colonel Campbell is a very agreeable man, and Mrs. Campbell a friendly, warm-hearted woman. I like them all. You know Miss Fairfax's situation in life, I conclude, what she is destined to be. Yes, I believe I do. You get upon delicate subjects, Emma, said Mrs. Weston, smiling. Remember that I am here. Mr. Frank Churchill hardly knows what to say when you speak of Miss Fairfax's situation in life. I will move a little farther off. I certainly do forget to think of her, said Emma, as having ever been anything but my friend and my dearest friend. He looked as if he fully understood and honoured such a sentiment. When the gloves were brought and they had quitted the shop again, Did you ever hear the young lady we are speaking of play? Said Frank Churchill. Ever hear her? Repeated Emma. You forget how much she belongs to Highbury. I have heard her every year of our lives since we both began. She plays charmingly. You think so, do you? I wanted the opinion of someone who could really judge. She appeared to me to play well, that is, with considerable taste, but I know nothing of the matter myself. I'm excessively fond of music, but without the smallest skill or right of judging anybody's performance. I have been used to hear hers admired, and I remember one proof of her being thought well to play well, a man, a very musical man, and in love with another woman, engaged to her on the point of marriage, would yet never ask that other woman to sit down to the instrument. If the lady in question could sit down instead, never seemed to like to hear one if he could hear the other. That, I thought, in a man of known musical talent, was some proof. Proof indeed, said Emma, highly amused. Mr. Dixon is very musical, is he? We shall know more about them all in half an hour from you than Miss Fairfax would have vouchsafed in half a year. Yes, Mr. Dixon and Miss Campbell were the persons, and I thought it very strong proof. Certainly, very strong it was. To own the truth, a great deal stronger if I had been Miss Campbell, would have been at all agreeable to me. I could not excuse a man's having more music than love, more ear than eye, a more acute sensibility to fine sounds than to my feelings. How did Miss Campbell appear to like it? It was her very particular friend, you know. Poor comfort, said Emma, laughing. One would rather have a stranger preferred than one's very particular friend. With a stranger it might not recur again. But the misery of having a very particular friend always at hand, to do everything better than one does oneself. Poor Mrs. Dixon. Well, I'm glad she is gone to settle in Ireland. You are right. It was not very flattering to Miss Campbell, but she really did not seem to feel it. So much the better, or so much the worse. I do not know which. But, be it sweetness or be it stupidity in her, quickness of friendship or dullness of feeling, there was one person, I think, who must have felt it. Miss Fairfax herself. She must have felt the improper and dangerous distinction. As to that, do not imagine that I expect an account of Miss Fairfax's sensations from you, or from anybody else. They are known to no human being, I guess, but herself. But if she continued to play whenever she was asked by Mr. Dixon, one may guess what one chooses. There appeared such a perfectly good understanding among them all, he began rather quickly, but checking himself, added. However, it is impossible for me to say on what terms they really were, how it might all be behind the scenes. I can only say that there was smoothness outwardly. But you, who have known Miss Fairfax from a child, must be a better judge of her character and how she is likely to conduct herself in critical situations than I can be. I have known her from a child, undoubtedly. We have been children and women together, and it is natural to suppose that we should be intimate, that we should have taken to each other whenever she visited her friends. But we never did. I hardly know how it has happened, a little perhaps from that wickedness on my side, which was prone to take disgust towards a girl so idolized and so cried up as she always was, by her aunt and grandmother, and all their set. And then her reserve. I could never attach myself to anyone so completely reserved. It is a most repulsive quality indeed, said he, oftentimes very convenient, no doubt, but never pleasing. There is safety in reserve, but no attraction. One cannot love a reserved person. Not till the reserve ceases towards oneself, and then the attraction may be the greater. But I must be more in want of a friend or an agreeable companion than I have yet been, to take the trouble of conquering anybody's reserve to procure one. Intimacy between Miss Fairfax and me is quite out of the question. I have no reason to think ill of her, not the least, except that such extreme and perpetual consciousness of word and manner, such a dread of giving a distinct idea about anybody, is apt to suggest suspicions of there being something to conceal. And all this time, Emma is being very open. But that also sounds judgy. Interesting. As Brene Brown says, we often judge where we're most vulnerable to shame. Which is, it's just, golly. He perfectly agreed with her. And after walking together so long, and thinking so much alike, Emma felt herself so well acquainted with him, that she could hardly believe it to be only their second meeting. He was not exactly what she had expected. Less of the man of the world and some of his notions, less of the spoiled child of fortune, therefore better than she had expected. His ideas seemed more moderate, his feelings warmer. She was particularly struck by his manner of considering Mr. Elton's house, which, as well as the church, he would go and look at, and would not join them in finding much fault with. No, he could not believe it a bad house. Not such a house as a man was to be pitied for having. If it were to be shared with the woman he loved, he could not think any man to be pitied for having that house. There must be ample room in it for every real comfort. The man must be a blockhead who wanted more. Mrs. Weston laughed, and said he did not know what he was talking about. Used only to a large house himself, and without ever thinking how many advantages and accommodations were attached to size, he could be no judge of the privations inevitably belonging to a small one. But Emma, in her own mind, determined that he did know what he was talking about, and that he showed a very amiable inclination to settle early in life and to marry from worthy motives. He might not be aware of the inroads on domestic peace to be occasioned by no housekeeper's room, or the bad butler's pantry, but no doubt he did perfectly feel that Enscombe could not make him happy, and that whenever he were attached, he would willingly give up much of wealth to be allowed an early establishment. We shall see if that's true. What a delightful, fun little tete-a-tete with Mr. Frank Churchill and Emma. Join me next time as I read Chapter 7 of Volume 2 of Emma. This Frank Churchill's really stirring the pot, and Emma's just being so opinionated about everything, and that's interesting to me. And she hates a person who's reserved. She didn't say that. She said she can never... What'd she say? Anybody's reserved to procure it. Intimacy between Miss Fairfax and me is quite out of the question. That is a strong and bold statement. Thank y'all so much for watching. Thank you guys for being a part of this, and join your local chapter of Jasna and meet me in Baltimore. I'm going to Baltimore, and then I'm going to Bath, and I have unlimited wealth. That's not true. I'm not going anywhere, but I can go. I think there's online stuff, maybe. Maybe there's like virtual stuff at Jasna's annual general meeting. That could be fun. We'll see. Take time for yourselves today, babes, and enjoy happy reading, and ta-ta!